Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to another part review of Memories of Ice. We're on part 4, the final part. It's a part of my entire Malazan reread. I have to say, in totality, Memories of Ice is not my favorite Malazan book. I think parts of it, especially in the beginning and towards the middle, drag a little bit. As always, there's great moments, great scenes. Overall, it doesn't hook me like some of the other books do. That being said, Part 4, particularly the second half of Part 4, is not only one of the greatest endings in the Malazan series, but one of the greatest fantasy book endings of all time, which ascend this book to another tier of book. Like, Dead House Gates is incredible. I don't know if it beats it, but I don't know. That's why it's so hard to rank these books, because there's parts of Memories of Ice I'm like, nah, not as good as this, not as good as this. The ending, I just think it's on another tier of existence. And there's so much craziness that happens that, these videos are always chaos. But I'm just going to try to rank the climax of the storylines in order from how much my mind was blown. Keep in mind, this is the second time, and I'll reference how much that changed. But I'm not spoiling future stuff, but I'm just saying, as a reread perspective, things have gotten shaken up a little bit. Starting with, before we get into specific storyline endings, I talked a lot about the previous videos about memories and how obviously it's called Memories of Ice. Like, what does that mean? Is it related to the Jagged? As you explore the story more, we learn that maybe it's about the Talanamas and their memories of ice, of fighting the Jagged, their eternal struggle. Because a lot of this is about them being trapped in this gathering, this ritual that they did to keep them alive forever, their goal of destroying all the Jagged, and how they're slowly being outdated. There's a great moment in this part where Tool fights the Segula, and his sister's like, yo, you're the first sword, you're about to lose a fight. And he goes, yeah, and not only that, but this guy's the number 3 of the Segula. And I lost to him, which means there's at least 2 other people on this planet that could beat me. The first sword of the Talanamas does not mean the best fighter on the planet anymore. We are simply, times have moved past us. And there's that whole, just a lot of talking about, their history and how they feel trapped, the Talan A, and how they were trapped in this gathering, and how they can't escape, and there's, a misjustice to them, or an injustice to them. But at the end of the story, it's kind of there's many scenarios, and I'm having trouble, getting one big thesis, but it's about, if Dead House Gates was about remembering things, so you don't repeat history, right? You would think the memories would be now this is where you would remember to enforce action, but it was almost more who are you giving these memories to, and what are we doing with them specifically, if that makes sense. For one of the big reveals in this book is when Cole and Murillo are taking the Mybi, and they met with the Knight of Death, of Hood. And it's revealed through dialogue, not said outright, but that it's Bodden from Dead House Gates. He said, my last memories were of fire, I was protecting a girl, I don't remember anything else. And there's a great line where, I can't remember if it was Murillo or Cole, they're saying this in their head, but they're like, if Hood has any compassion, he would not return his memories to him, because you could tell, obviously it must have been a traumatic death. So that was an instance where memories were withheld for good. Right, and this happens again at the end with the Jagged sister, as she's torn from the rent. Telemandus and Quick Ben do some magic to make her not remember that she was just in eternal torment for X thousands of years. Right, that's another aspect. It's memories not returned, and what does that do for people? But then there's the case of, obviously we'll talk about it more in detail later, Itkovian and the Talanamas. He takes their memories and he doesn't know what to do with them, and they're return it to the earth. You need to return it to the earth. You need to take it from us. So it's almost memories not in the right spot. It's you need to let them go at a certain point. I don't know. It's strange. And there's a line in this part too, and I can't remember. I couldn't find it. I didn't mark it for some reason. But it was ownership without. It was something with ownership without basically meaning behind them. If you have this memory, if you have these things but you don't use them correctly, it's worthless essentially. I think this was said to Silver Fox, if I remember correctly. She has this knowledge of her people, right? But because she's not the one that she doesn't get it, right? So it's almost useless that she has this knowledge. And I thought that was a very interesting quote, and I wish I had marked it, and I couldn't find it again. But if anybody has that quote and exactly send it down in the comments. So I thought that was very interesting, and I want to know what you guys' thoughts is on that. And then obviously, tying into the themes of Dead House Gates, obviously this book, the epilogue ends with Duker returned. We know at the end, like his vial or whatever was broken, whatever that meant, and then they took his body back to Jerusalem, and he's basically like, hey guys, like, horrible story that just happened to you bridge burners. Do you want to hear an even sadder story? And he tells them, presumably, the story of Dead House Gates. But that's an instance of memory being given to people who perhaps can do something about it or learn something about it. But our boy Duker lives, and he's in the safe hands. He's among friends, right? But regarding endings, I think in terms of like mind-blowing scale, oddly enough, we're going to talk, and this just shows you how crazy things are, because his ending is insane. So he's being tortured, and we realize that the spirit of Tog, like the Tog and Fanderay, the two wolf gods, like the lovers or whatever, Baljag has like the spirit, Tog is trapped in Tog's body, and they can't escape because of how malformed he is, how broken he is. And at the end, he is released. He dies as Tool is fighting through the Panian Domain to save him. He dies, and but his soul rides Tog into this afterlife, and then eventually he's reborn into Anastar, who is a broken shell of a man after Itkovian took his pain away. So he's reborn, and Anastar still has one eye, so he's still one-eye Tog, but he is still alive, thankfully. And there's a great moment at the end, which I loved the first time I read it, where Tool rejects basically Silverbox. He goes like, I'm tired of this ritual, I'm tired of being undead. And it's kind of not really explained how this happens or why this happens or what exactly happened. He is reborn as like a flesh mass, like his sister Kalava. And there's a moment where he recognizes Tok is in Anastar's body, but Anastar / Tok doesn't recognize his friend Tool, because he doesn't look like a corpse anymore. And they have this interaction where Tool's like, are you okay? Tok's like, yeah, well, I'm fine. Like, nice to meet you. He goes, good, that's all I want to know. And just walks off. And just like, Tok's one line calling Tool his friend like led Tool to like doing this rampage to try to save his friend and doing everything he can to keep him safe. It's some of the most pure things you'll ever read, and it makes me emotional. But that happens there. And before, I'll save that because it's up there on the crazy factor. The other thing too is Paran's storyline. It doesn't have it as the definitive ending as some of the other ones, but it hints at a lot of future stuff, which I thought was very interesting. So, excuse me, Paran's struggle was like battling with his needs to be master of the deck. He didn't want to do it at the beginning. He was feeling these pains, but eventually by the end of the book, he's opening portals, he's opening doorways, he's blessing gods, he's accepting the crippled god into the deck of dragons, he's accepting the House of Chains. So he kind of does accept this over time, right? And he stands up to Silver Fox. He's like, I've got over my grief. Like, you need to like get over yourself. Essentially, like, you're acting so weird. But there's a moment where he kind of gets like lore dumped a lot about like darkness, and we learn a lot about this animated rake sword Dragnipur. It's created by Draconis, and we learn that like the gateway or the entrance to darkness in like Mother Dark is in the sword, but it's chained to the wagon inside Dragnipur, and it's running away from chaos. So darkness is like this symbol of order versus chaos, and that's kind of like a theme in the series, where it's like the ultimate battle is order versus chaos. Because who uses chaos magic? The crippled god, right? And he's like the main antagonist, and we know like Hairlock from Gardens of the Moon, he used magic, and he's like a little weird, right? But once he started using chaos, like eroded his brain and made him absolutely bonkers. But this wagon, because it's not getting fresh souls to pull it, and they're just piling up dead on the wagon, it's slowing down, and chaos is catching up. So basically, they're like, Paran, Dragnipur needs to explode. It needs to be destroyed. And then Paran's like, wouldn't that release every single demon that Animator Rake and Draconis have killed, including Draconis himself, who's in there and definitely wants revenge on Animator Rake? Yes. They're like, yeah, but it needs to be done. And my favorite part of this storyline is when, after Animator Rake does this great reveal of like, everyone's like, oh, he's dead, he's so dead, Animator Rake's definitely dead, he died off screen. He's not gonna die off screen. He comes up, he's like, yo, time to save you. But there's a point where like Rake, like, there's a plans in motion to let Draconis escape and to destroy your sword. And he's literally so nonchalant, he's like, yeah, okay, let's see it then. If it has to be done, let's deal with it. Whatever. So either he already knows about this plan or he doesn't give a hoot. Either way, it's completely badass. Like I said, still low on the mind-blowing scale. The next thing, which might shock people for how, I guess, comparative low it is in the list, Itkovian's storyline. When I read this book the first time, it absolutely blew my mind, and it was my favorite of the endings. So basically, his whole thing is my work's not yet done, my work's not yet done. But then as he journeys closer to Coral, he's like, maybe I am done. Like, what am I doing in this journey? Like, I'm not part of the Grey Swords anymore. I'm kind of just like lost. Like, they didn't let, like, a Nasser wouldn't let me save his soul. So like the Grey Sword Shield Anvil did it. Like, what am I here for? Then he locks eyes with the Telanemast army. He goes, yeah, that's it. And he takes all of their grief and all of their pain and all of their memories, and he acts as, like, without the backing of a god, which you're normally supposed to do, he takes all of it. And there's a great line where it says, if Vanir was still his god and still, like, able to help Itkovian out, he would have rescinded his help. He's like, this is too much baggage for me right now. But Itkovian, being the badass that he is, he does it. And I don't even think I understood it completely the first time around, or even most of the second time around, like what exactly he was doing. But this, like, absolving, this redemption of the Telanemast that Itkovian was doing allowed the Telanemast to now be able to go to the afterlife. Because before, like, literally, they've been around so long, they're like, Silver Fox, please release us from the bindings. She's like, no, I need you to fight. Oh, she didn't even say what she needed him for. She wanted him to fight, basically, the Kachin Shamale at the battle and do other stuff. But she didn't want to tell them that for some reason, whatever. But they're like, please let us go. Like, we literally just want to turn to dust. Like, let us die. And, like, we'll be fine with oblivion. But because Itkovian redeemed them, now they can actually go to the afterlife. And they're so grateful for it. And they're like, this is so much better than anything we could have hoped for. Because not only now can we die, but when we die, there's life beyond. And Itkovian single-handedly did that. And it led to probably my single favorite quote in the entirety of the series, which is Itkovian's, he's having like an inner dialogue with a Telanemast. And they're basically like, why did you do this, why did you do this? And he talks about compassion. And that compassion quote where it's like, the problem with humans is, like, you think like compassion is like a gift. Like, you have to, like, give it out sparingly. Well, you should give it out in abundance. I think that's the most beautiful quote in like literature, period. It's probably my favorite single quote in Malazan period. I had that quote printed out. I had put it up on my wall since I read it over 2 years ago. And I just love that quote so much, and it's such a great line. But yeah, so that's what I focused on the first time. I love that one. And reading it again, it was just as impactful. But I've read that quote so many times that it just almost like became like, yeah, it's just like fact, man. Like, I'm not like surprised by that storyline anymore because I loved it so much. That being said, on the other hand, the Maivy storyline, not one I focused on my first reread because I was just so mind blown by Itkovian's and also the big one that's coming up. But and even last video, I was like, I don't really know what's going on with Silver Fox and all that. It was a little bit more clarified for me because I was a little bit more tuned into different things. So basically, Silver Fox, her whole goal with was to create this realm for her mother to, like, kind of give her back the youth, right? And it's this sense that we're like, her body is aging, her body is dying, but she could create a dream world with Krupp's help and Krupp's powers and K. Rool's powers by extension, I believe. To create this realm for her where she's young again and where she could, like, live forever and, like, be like the master of this realm. There's a great line where it's either, I can't remember, it's Cole and Murillo. Like, in this book, they really blend together because, like, they both, like, serve this very similar purpose. One of them is like, they're like sleeping, like, sleeping woman who has her own realm. That sounds a lot like Burn. And then they're like, yeah, exactly like Burn. And then they're like, how many sleeping old women are there that have their own, like, how many sleeping women with their own universes are there? Like how many, like, oh, I'm in a realm where it's like the dream of this goddess, but then the old woman in this one has a dream where she has her own universe. Just keeps going down and down and down, which I thought was a funny line. But basically, like, she's given this realm, which eventually the throne of the beasts is in this realm as well. So, like, she kind of, like, cedes kind of some control to Tog Infanterie, of like this control. I think Infanterie is the name, right? Of like the beast throne in this realm. But she can like basically like first of all she doesn't want to do it. She's like, I don't want to do that. And Krupp's like, do it, please do it. Finally she accepts it. She enters this realm and she has her youth back. So like all her suffering was not for anything. She could live out the rest of her days in peace in this little dream world, which is nice. And she's also being protected by Hood himself, that her body's not going to be tampered with. So she's in good shape there. But I just really like, I didn't remember that happened at all because I was so focused on other stuff, which I think adds to my confusion of like what Silver Fox was doing in the last part. But that kind of clears it up because the Silver Fox is just like horrible at communicating. If she would have just told the Planet like, guys, like I will like release you from the bonds. All we gotta do is just slay the rest of these guys because all my friends are gonna die, and I need to make this realm for my mom, and then we're clear. But instead, she's like, no, I need you. Like you're my servants, and they're like, yo, like what? Like who are you? Anyway, yeah, but like just to that point, there's the whole. One of the other major themes of this book is about redemption, and it's about compassion. And the whole time you think that Silver Fox is cold and uncaring to her mother, when really like most of her actions are dictated by redeeming herself and showing compassion to her mother by making this realm for her. And obviously at Kovian, immense amount of compassion, a mind-boggling amount, a mind-exploding amount of compassion by taking all of the Talanian Master's pain, which does kill him, by the way. And then finally, the other big act of compassion is the conclusion of the painting and seer, the jagged. It is confirmed to be the jagged child from the first part. We know that Kilava was going in there, and she feels a lot of guilt for trapping the two children in there all the way back in the day. And we learned that it was the matron, the Kachin Shamali matron, that was released in return. And then she took the painting and seer out and left the sister in. And that's why they have this relationship. So she's trying to get redemption. She's like, listen, like, I'm sorry. Like, I thought it was a portal. He's like, you didn't think it was a portal. You were trying to kill me. It's like, no, I didn't. Please. Like, I feel bad, but I also hate you because I want to kill you because you're evil and you killed my brother's best friend. You're so evil. You're so twisted. And he is twisted. But also, the crippled god was having such a heavy impact on him that there's a moment where it's like, or I think it's like Quick Ben or something. He's like, you feel less evil now, don't you? He goes, in fact, I quite do feel less evil now that you mention it, because the crippled god was really pulled on his evil strings there. But basically, there's a moment where they both, like Kilava and the Sphere, both had this moment where they're like, listen, like we can't forgive each other for what we did to each other respectively, but we realize that we both made huge mistakes. And I love the way that resolves, which I also completely forgot. So Quick Ben, the genius that he is, takes the matron, and like basically she's nothing but like a power source now. She's like useless. Switches her back in for the sister. They mind wipe the sister. She forgets that she was in eternal torment. And then they take the seer, and like he's like, all right, your sister, you're now like basically an uncle figure. You're gonna take care of her, and we're gonna take you to Burn. And they use the jagged cold magic to hold back the crippled god's infection of Burn and Burn's Warren. And there's a great moment where it's like, it calls back, and first of all, it's like the witch returns. I'm like, who the hell's the witch? It's the witch that Quick Ben talked to all the way at the beginning of the book, who took him to Burn's Warren, first of all. Because I remember thinking about that later in the series. I'm like, well, whatever happened to that infection? Like, how come like for this one book, magic like didn't work, and then all of a sudden it works for the rest of the series? It's because of the solution where instead of killing the seer like everyone wanted to, like Animated Rake was planning to kill the seer, everyone was planning to kill the seer. Quick Ben's like, I got a better idea. Let's use his power, let's use his redemption to actually kill two birds with one stone. We get rid of the pain and demand, and also we could stop the infection of the crippled god from spreading either entirely or just slows it down so much that it's basically a non-factor anymore. Finally, the big gut punch that we were all dreading talking about, or at least I was the death of Whiskey Jack. When I read this series the first time, I was so stunned that Whiskey Jack was killed. Especially, and you know what? Because Erickson, he does a dirty one in this one. Because the whole book, he's talking about the Taishrun mishap, the destruction of the bridge burners. It was all, in Whiskey Jack coming to this relation, the whole book, it was all for one person. The only person she really wanted to kill was Whiskey Jack. Because everyone's saying that if anyone should be emperor, it should be Whiskey Jack. He's the chosen one. He's the best leader. Corlat's in love with him. He's better than Animator Rake. Animator Rake respects him. He respects nobody. It's like he's the best man to ever exist. He's the chosen one. He is the main character. Boom. He's dead by none other than Kelor. What? Kelor? And it's such a pansy way. It's such a pansy way, too. Literally, Silver Fox just shows up. And he's like, all right, time to die. It's time for me to kill you. And Whiskey Jack's like, no, it's not. And then his leg injury from before, because he never got it healed, explodes and gets him killed. And it's said, if his leg didn't explode, he would have beat Kelor, the High King, who's lived for millennia since the prologue of the book tens of thousands of years ago. He would have beat him. But he dies. And I think it's, like, I was never so sure that this guy was, like, the endgame protagonist. Only see him die. I'm sure this is what people who didn't know Game of Thrones, like, killed characters off must have felt when Ned died in the first book. It had to have felt the exact same way. You know what I mean? Like, this is the third book of 10. And you just killed off Whiskey Jack, the leader, the best leader of men amongst all time. Who are we going to rally around now? You know what I mean? That's what I felt like the first time I read it. I was so stunned, I literally had to put the book down. This time, because I knew it was coming, I just, like, every time I read, like, oh, Whiskey Jack used to be emperor, I'm like, shut the fuck up. You're a son of a bitch, Erickson. I don't mean that. Obviously, it's great writing. But, Kelor, the High King, man, can't believe it. Poor Corlat falls in love with Whiskey Jack. I apologize for the strong language, guys. But it just bites. It bites. It really does. But there's a great moment, at least, where Animator Rake basically clears out Moonspun by himself and offers a tomb for Whiskey Jack. But I listen. I'm not going to spoil other deaths in the series, guys, because obviously it is Book of the Fallen. But this is definitely one of the top ones that hurt. It hurts so bad. And I really don't got much more to say about it. Because, of course, our hero dies in an act of compassion as well, trying to save Silver Fox. But I'm at a loss for words. Later this week, I'll be doing my future spoilers of the series, and like how that plays into it. There's some good stuff in there. I'll have to look through my notes, though, to really compile my thoughts. But look forward to that video. And look forward to me starting into House of Chains. I will say going into this one, too. I know I said that some parts of Memories of Ice were a little bit slow for me. I had issues with House of Chains the first time I read it. It's true. I don't think it was the most boring book of the series. I think that goes to Dust of Dreams. But I know I struggled with House of Chains. So I'm interested to see if that was just me not understanding enough of it to really like it, or it's just a slower book. But I suppose we'll see. And look forward to that video in the coming weeks. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video as well, and you'd like to see more of it in the future. And as always, thanks for sticking around.